I am happy.
Okay, sir, we can start.
Wait a minute. There is a message from Dr. Shahira. Dr. Shahira is from Singapore.
Sorry, ma'am, I totally forgot about it.
Hello, Dr. Shahira. Dr. Shahira, what do you do in Singapore?
Hi, sir. Good
Hello.
afternoon. Yeah, I'm working. Doing a volunteering job in Singapore Red Cross. So it's
Yes, you told us last time. I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome, Dr. Shahira. Sorry, we forgot about you.
It's okay. It's 5:30 here, actually.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Raju?
Yeah, we can start with today's session. So, hearty good afternoon to all. Welcome to our second session. Today, we're having a topic on introduction to pain, and it will be taken by Dr. Rajagopal. So, we can start with Sir's presentation. We can have it for around 40 to 45 minutes, followed by 50 minutes of discussion. By 4, we can have our case presentation, followed by its discussion. We can wind up our session by 4:30. Thank you all for joining in. So, Dr. Rajagopal, we don't need any further introduction. So, over to you, sir.
Yes, they had enough of introduction last week itself. So welcome back, dear friends. I'm glad we are meeting up again. Though only 75% of the registrants have joined yet, which is a slight disappointment, but maybe a few more will wander in a bit late. The last week, I had presented an introduction to palliative care. I had most importantly emphasized that palliative care was treatment of serious health-related suffering of patients and families, irrespective of the diagnosis. I also made a point of saying that palliative care has to begin ideally when the suffering starts. It's not only end of life care, it's not only for some disease processes. To repeat from the Lancet Commission wording, it's for treatment of management of all serious health-related suffering of the patient and family. There's a reason why we begin with pain. For one thing, pain is indeed the commonest of all symptoms, certainly in cancer and in several other disease states. Secondly, pain can be all-consuming, and when somebody is in pain, you have no space to think about anything else. It occupies the whole person. And therefore, we are starting with pain. Today, we will not go into the details of management. Raju, can you start the PowerPoint presentation, please? We will not go into the treatment today, possibly. That will happen over the next week. But I'll mainly would like you to understand pain as not only a nervous phenomenon, but as a sensory and emotional experience. And we will
Sir, you are muted, sir. We can't hear you.
I had lost you. I had lost the connection for a second. I'm sorry. I don't know up to which point you heard me. I hope you heard that I mentioned that pain is. I would like you to everyone to understand what we mean by pain being a sensory and emotional experience. We will have to understand why continuous pains need to be treated on a continuous basis. And this will make the main part of my discussion today. Raju? I'd like to begin by presenting to you this young woman with advanced cancer of the breast. She was in pain. I went to see her because my colleagues had reported that this woman was continuing to be in pain for more than 6 weeks, that she seemed to respond to medicines, but she would not take the medicines. And after 6 weeks, we still had not got any pain relief. Raju, are you looking at the chats? There is a plea for help from Dr. Milan Fatnis.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'll be calling her soon.
Okay. So I went to see her in her home as part of our home visit program. When I walked in, one member of the team was talking to her again about why it was important to take the medicines on time, to be adherent to the prescriptions. And she was there looking very sulky, like a child being scolded, but still not willing to submit. Raju, next slide. And I'm sharing this story mainly to highlight this point, the impact of emotion on the experience of pain, on the experience of suffering. And about ourselves, we will have to understand that in you and me, our social situation and emotional situation will affect the intensity of pain. If you are at home and you get a severe headache, and your spouse or your mother comes and presses your forehead, okay, the pain is still there, but it becomes almost a pleasant experience. If not, you feel soothed. If you have traveled to a strange city for the first time alone, you are in a hotel room, and then the pain comes. Your suffering and your pain experience will be much more. The experience that you score on a scale will be likely to be more. And this will happen to us, this will happen to our patients. Similarly, your experience and my experience of pain with the same stimulus could be different. You are different from me. Maybe you are a strong person and you will grin and bear it and say, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter. Whereas I'll be crying out loud. You all know this. You know that in your own ward, suppose there are 5 people after the same surgery. One will be screaming away in hell and the others will be lying there calmly. So, if the person is crying out louder, the important lesson to take is that it is not the person's fault. If I seem to be complaining too much and crying out too much with pain, please don't judge me. Please don't behave as if it is my fault. Even if the cause is my emotional weakness, that is not my fault. That is just the way I am made. That's the circumstance I am in. And I want you, as my treating doctor, to understand that if I am weak, if I am having a strong emotional component to my pain, it is not my fault. It's up to you to find out why I am emotionally reacting so much and try to help me. So please give a second's attention to the last line there. If I say I have pain, I have pain. You may be the doctor. But about my pain, I will tell you that I am in pain. It is possible that sometimes somebody may malinger about maybe to get a 2 days leave. Somebody may say, come and say, I'm having backache. I accept that. Having said that, that's okay. It happens more in ESI clinics, I know. But you don't start by assuming that I am malingering. Even in that ESI clinic, if I am coming before you with back pain, you start by assuming that I am suffering. Look at me. And that, not making judgment immediately on seeing me is what I'm asking you to do. Raju. I don't remember whether in the last session I mentioned Cicely Saunders. Dame Cicely Saunders was the founder of modern palliative care movement, who started the first ever hospice in the world, modern hospice in the world in London called St. Christopher's Hospice in 1965. And she came out with this concept of total pain. Pain is not only physical, it's affected by social and financial issues, emotional issues, spiritual issues, and the overall quantum of suffering is what is meant by total pain. Hey, doctors, please note that each circle is encroaching onto the other. You see, if I have severe depression, I will have more of physical suffering because my muscles will be more tense, the curvature of my spine will be less, and my emotional status will affect the physical aspects of pain. Similarly, each circle may encroach onto the other. So some of you may be interventional pain physicians. The International Association for Study of Pain talks all the time about multi-modal approach to pain management. Even if you are an interventional pain physician, I was at one point of time, long back, but I made the mistake of being too needle happy, concentrating only on nerves and needles. Even if you are an interventional pain specialist, I hope you will remember that these 4 triangles, circles which together make the total pain is important. And our aim will be to achieve improved quality of life, not only pain relief. Thank you, Raju. Next. Let me take you back to that young woman's case. The girl who with cancer of the breast, who had severe pain for 6 weeks, would not take the tablets on time. And she sulkily listens to lectures but doesn't follow instructions. So I sat beside her and asked, Swarna Prabha, I hear you are in pain. Obviously, if you don't take that, will everybody please remain muted? Unless you have to ask something. I asked, listen, this is an important thing for everyone. You very often find that patients do not adhere to the treatment, and we may be tempted to scold them. That would be a very wrong strategy. They will hide things from you. Once you scold them, they will never tell you the truth. Raju, somebody is not muted and is that's creating some disturbance.
I request all to stay muted. Dr. Kanmani, can you mute yourself?
So I asked her, why don't you? If you are not taking the tablets on time, there must be a reason for that. What is it? She first said it upsets her stomach. I explained that you had a stomach upset with a tablet, we have stopped that. We don't give it to you now. This doesn't upset the stomach. She said, I can't take it on time because I don't have a watch. I said that, see, I see that you have a clock in the living room. Let me bring it up. We can easily bring it here and hang it before you. No, I don't like looking at the clock. I sat there calmly, gave a pause, and then asked, Swarnaprabha, why is it that you don't like looking at the clock? It tells me that time is passing. I shall soon die, won't I? You see, if I had given her another lecture about taking tablets on time and come away, I would have made a serious mistake. Raju, can you go back to the previous slide? When we explored deep into it, I was involved, many members of our team was involved, our social worker was involved, and we also got a psychiatrist to help. What we found was she had developed depression as an adolescent. At the 18, she had jumped into a well to commit suicide, had come out with a fracture of the femur. And she now believed that her cancer was God's punishment for having attempted suicide. So many emotions. We found out that socially, her husband was in the army. He would come on leave for 1 month. She was mortally scared of him. And the fact that he would be coming on leave soon was one major fear for her. And she was in clinical depression. Her improvement depended on addressing all these factors, not only morphine. But once we had a good conversation, she started taking tablets regularly, morphine regularly. We started her on antidepressants, and we went on to other social interventions. This is what I mean by multi-modal treatment. Not only needles or tablets or interventions, but addressing the whole person. Raju, next slide, please. No, next one. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a question here for you. It may be Swarnaprabha's cancer, or it may be something else. But if a stimulus is constant, I have shown the nociceptor of the peripheral nerve, the nerve ending. I am showing up to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord here, from where it would cross and go to the thalamus and the cortex where pain would be appreciated. Forget about all the theory. If the stimulus at the nociceptor was constant, after a day or two, would the pain response be the same, or will it increase, or will it decrease? The stimulus is constant, it is not changing. So let us not theorize about disease progression. Stimulus is constant.
Decrease.
Decrease, says Dr. Krishnaraj. Any other answer?
Increases.
Chetana says it will increase.
Will increase.
So several
Increases.
people increase, many people say it is increase. Dr. Krishnaraj must be thinking of the person adapting emotionally. Krishnaraj, is that what you are
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're right. I will accept that it is right. That happened to me. I had a pain in the shoulder the first time, and it happened to me. I was actually thinking of meningitis. As doctors do, we think of the worst possible things. And once I understood that it's a bit of a cervical spondylosis, I learned to rub the shoulders myself and walk away. No big deal. But Krishnaraj, this can happen only with the mildest pains. With
Okay,
any
sir.
serious pain, Chetna and several others mentioned that it will increase. Krishnaraj, remember that is the body's adaptation to fight danger. Remember the early man. If he saw a tiger, he had to run away and escape. When there is pain, it is a danger signal. There is a stimulus here, run away, escape. And if you don't run away, you can't run away from a neural irritation. The body keeps giving you more and more pain. Run away, run away, run away. And I'll quickly describe the mechanism by which that happens. Next slide. So while I accept that Krishnaraj could be right, and in the mildest pains, your emotional adaptation and acceptance will help you to cope. In any serious pain, there are several things that happen. Remember, what you have here is the peripheral nerve ending. We will call it nociceptor, something that senses a noxious stimulus. For one thing, the body, in its effort to protect you by giving you more pain, causes sensitization of the nociceptors, making it more sensitive so that the same stimulus causes more and more electrical impulses to be generated. And that sensitization, more than anything else, is caused by liberation of one chemical at sites of injury. What causes sensitization of the nociceptors? Prostaglandins. Prostaglandins, many nociceptive substances are liberated at the tissue sites of tissue injury, but prostaglandins sensitize the nerve ending to all pain-producing substances. So that once prostaglandins have sensitized it, then your hydrogen ions, your potassium ions, your kinins, everything will cause more pain. In addition, there is also recruitment of what we will call silent or sleepy nociceptors. Silent nociceptors which ordinarily do not function, but when there is danger, they are called into action. So what's the result? If today X number of nociceptors are there, tomorrow there are 2X nociceptors, and they are all more effective. So much so, every day the electrical impulses keep rising. More and more and more impulses reach the brain, though the stimulus is remaining constant. So what are we going to do about it? Can you think of any way of solving this issue? What medicine will help to reduce the nociceptive stimulation? Yes, as Dr. Priyanka just now have said in a chat, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs predominantly cause pain relief by its adverse effect on prostaglandins. NSAIDs by prostaglandin inhibition will reduce the pain caused by all pain-producing substances. So before we start next session on pain, which I suppose will be next week, maybe if you have a pad and pen on you, make a note of it, or make a note of it on your disk. Please have a mental list of the 3 most important toxic effects of NSAIDs. I'm not going into it now. That I'm leaving it to you for your thought and a mental list. 3 most important toxic effects of NSAIDs. NSAIDs can be very effective. It can be very damaging also. We'll have to balance that. Okay, here is one way in which pain will keep on increasing. Raju. Another way in which pain will keep on increasing is it will cause recruitment of adjacent spinal segments. Those who work in casualty will know. Somebody comes with a rib fracture, you ask where is the pain and they will show you the exact spot of pain. Tomorrow you go and ask him, they'll say my whole chest is in pain. Adjacent spinal segments or areas in the brain will get recruited so that the same electrical impulses will now affect many more areas for causing pain. And next please, in addition to recruitment, go back. Wait, next one. Next one, Raju. Next one. Yet another feature is central sensitization. This is also called the wind-up phenomenon, like winding up a spring. What happens when you wind up a spring and it's ready to go? You press on a buzzer and it goes, making a loud noise. Similarly, the dorsal horn of the spinal cord with continued pain will get so sensitized that it will respond abnormally to every electrical impulse that is reaching it. You can see the picture. The nociceptors are getting recruited. They will cause more electrical impulse. The adjacent spinal segments are recruited. The impulses will reach more areas, and the dorsal horn cell in those areas itself gets hypersensitive, so that the number of impulses going to the brain will keep on increasing. And this sensitization of the dorsal horn cell is mediated by the neurotransmitter N-methyl D-aspartate. N-methyl D-aspartate. And even if you forget the full form of NMDA, it will not put you in jail. It's okay to forget it, so long as you remember that something blocking NMDA can cause pain relief. And every anesthetist in the group must be immediately saying the name of a medicine. What is the NMDA inhibitor that you use as an anesthetic? Dr. Priyanka is always quick on the buzzer. So many people, Abhishek and all are saying it is ketamine. Now, Dr. Abhishek Nag, when he uses ketamine in the operation theater, rarely to anesthetize somebody, maybe giving 2 to 5 milligram per kg intravenously. Here, you may be using only 1/10 of it, maybe something like 0.2 milligram per kg to start with. Parenterally, intravenously, subcutaneously, or orally. Orally. Ketamine can be given orally also. Not routinely. This is not for everybody. Just because we now know this, you can't go about treating everybody's pain with ketamine. It's a medicine with a narrow margin of safety, and over the long term can have several adverse effects, which we will go into on another day. But the important point to remember that when all these processes have taken place, ketamine would have a place. The another thing is, remember that very often in our country particularly, we don't treat pain early. Pain relief reaches less than 2% of the needy in our country. So when you are known to be treating somebody for pain, gradually more and more people will come to you. And there I hope you will remember all this. Our treatment will be multimodal. Today I'm not going to talk about interventions at all. That's not the purpose here. Interventions have their role in a limited number of people, but not by itself, as part of a multimodal approach, along with several other medicines that you will use, several other modalities of treatment that we'll use, And if somebody's pain has gone on unrelieved for a long period of time, then not only your NSAID, not only your opioid, but something like an NMDA blocker may also become necessary. We will talk about it on another day. I think Raju will allow me to come back and talk about difficult pain on another day. At that time, we will talk more about it. Raju? So why did I give you all that theory? All that about neurotransmitters and nerve endings and nociceptors and a dorsal horn of the spinal cord? Mainly two things. The earlier pain is treated, the better. I'll repeat that. The earlier the pain is treated, the better. The more time you take, the more difficult it will be to treat pain. Secondly, I mean, this may be totally against what your professor of medicine or professor of surgery may have told you in medical school. Don't give analgesics. That's what was taught to me. Sorry, that's what I used to teach. Immediately, as soon as I qualified and I became a tutor, I used to teach these absurd things. Don't give pain relief. They're all dangerous. Rubbish. They all have their side effects. It's up to us to understand them and use them judiciously. So treat pain early. Don't allow these traumatic, horrible things to happen to the nervous system. If you treat pain early, the number of people with chronic pain will decrease. If you have worked as an RMO with a surgeon and you see 100 patients in a week postoperatively, you will know that a significant number of people, not 90 out of 100, but 3 or 4 of the 100 will come back with a chronic scar pain. And that is something that could have been avoided if pain were treated early. And the second most important learning point that I will leave you with is that in all continuous pains, analgesics should be given on a continuous basis depending on duration of action of each. A continuous pain, typical example, your postoperative patient after a laparotomy or thoracotomy. People coming from the West are astounded to hear how we leave these people in agonizing pain. And the typical prescription in a surgical ward or postoperative ward is injection Fortwin SOS, 1 ampule SOS, or something like that, SOS. So based on what you have learned so far, when we say continuous pains need to be treated on a continuous basis, each analgesic will have to be given by the clock, depending on duration of action of the medicine. That means paracetamol should go in 6 early. That is true for your headache also. Those who get headache, various kinds of headache, it responds to paracetamol. Instead of making, hey, there are 46 people signed up today. I take a guess that at least 8 of you would be having periodic headaches. And those people will know that they are irritable when they have a headache. So, as says Chetana, thank you for the underscoring that in the chat. But you know that you will get irritable when you are in pain. You make, you quarrel with your colleagues, you quarrel with your family, you shout at your family, you develop an issue with your spouse. The better thing will be to take an adequate dose of paracetamol every 6 hours, you know that that headache is likely to go away day after tomorrow. Continuous basis. Ibuprofen, the NSAID, we said should be used cautiously. When you do it, if it is to be effective, it has to be taken 3 times a day. After food, of course. You will talk about it next time. If it is morphine, it will have to be taken every 4 hours. So these are 2 learning points from my long talk today. Hey, if I may add another one, pain is not only a sensation, it's an emotional experience. Varies from person to person and the same person from time to time. Secondly, because severe pain will gradually get worse with time and we can cause lasting damage to the person, his psyche, and to the nervous system. Analgesics, the pain should be treated early and analgesics should be given on a continuous basis depending on duration of action of the medicine. Raju? And before we wind up, I'll certainly will find time for questions and answers. Look at that diagram. We said pain occurs by stimulation of the nociceptor. The nociceptor can be stimulated by trauma, like a needle going into your finger. It can be also because of heat or cold. There can be many. And once there is an injury, it will be because of nociceptive substances like kinins or serotonin or hydrogen ions or potassium ions, etc. But there can also be pain without nociceptor stimulation. Shall I give you an example? Suppose somebody has a cancer in the upper lobe of the lung and the cancer is irritating the brachial plexus. Cancer has eroded onto the brachial plexus. Where will the person feel the pain? If somebody's cancer, arm and forearm, the pain will be felt in the upper limb. Is there anything stimulating the nociceptor here? No. There is no stimulation of the nociceptor here, but because of, thank you everybody, thank you for the responses. But because of abnormal impulse generation in the brachial plexus, you have pain over the arm. That is a typical neuropathic pain. Essentially, all pains can be classified into these 2 types. There are many other classifications that are possible between superficial and deep, somatic and visceral, granted. But all pains would come into these 2 groups or to a mixture of these. It can be both. In the same site, it can be nociceptive and neuropathic. That's also possible. So all pains can be classified into nociceptive, neuropathic, or a combination of the 2. Why am I saying this? Raju, that must be my last slide for the day, right? No, one more. Okay, go back. Why am I saying this? Why am I making a fuss about it? Because the treatment will be very different between the 2. Neuropathic pain may not respond to the medicines that you use for nociceptive pains. They may, up to a point. On the other hand, they may not. Therefore, it is important to distinguish neuropathic pains. And you know also that because pain is a subjective experience, you cannot diagnose pain on an MRI scan. You can't do an imaging and identify pain. And similarly, there is no investigation that will clearly tell you that this pain is neuropathic. I know people do nerve conduction studies which are rather non-specific and not clearly indicative of diagnosis. So it'll be good for us to understand neuropathic pain, and I will give 3 diagnostic features which are not absolute. 3 diagnostic features which may guide you to a diagnosis of neuropathic pain. Raju? First, the quality of pain. Burning, shooting, lancinating, etc. And the typical thing is, I'm feeling as my whole arm is burning, as if somebody has put chili paste on my arm. That may be the description. That is not again absolute. Nociceptive pain can also be burning, especially after application of heat. But this is something you will bear in mind. Then you will look for the area of distribution. Neuropathic pain will be in the area of distribution of a nerve or a group of nerves, at least in the beginning, before a lot of yes, shock-like pain too, yes, absolutely. Before a lot of sensitization, recruitment of adjacent segments have taken place, till then, the pain will be in the area of distribution of a nerve or a group of nerves. And if the pain has been long-lasting, because the dorsal horn cell will gradually become abnormal, there will be abnormal sensation in the area of pain. Again, typically in that painful area, after that brachial plexus infiltration, they will say, I have sunbite, a burning. And then you see that you will find that one part may be hypoaesthetic or anesthetic. You may find that many areas are hyperesthetic and hyperalgesic. So abnormal sensation in the area of pain is another feature. All 3 need not be there, but you will look for all 3 to make a tentative clinical diagnosis of neuropathic pain. And remember, as I said, many pains can be a combination of both nociceptive and neuropathic. So we made the first major point we made was about pain being an emotional experience and not being judgmental about people who complain or who do not respond, who do not take medicines properly. The second important point is, because of the changes to the nerve system, we must treat the pain early, and in all continuous pains, we will give analgesics on a continuous basis. And Chaitanya Agarwal, from personal experience, is sending out a chat message endorsing this. And finally, pain can be, Raju, previous slide please, nociceptive, or if the pain is caused by abnormal impulse generation anywhere in the nervous system, whether it is peripheral nerve or centrally in the spinal cord or brain, it is neuropathic pain. And the next slide, and the typical features are any combination of that particular quality of pain, like shock, like also in the area of distribution of a nerve or a group of nerves, and possibly abnormal sensation in the area of pain. I think, ladies and gentlemen, I'll stop there for the day. And if Raju permits it, we will have 15 minutes for a discussion on this. You can either raise your hand, and Raju and Vishnu. Vishnu is, by the way, have you all met Vishnu? Vishnu, the man with that beautiful smile, is our technical support person who makes sure that we are okay technically. So please raise your hand, either physically, or if you go to that participants list, you will find an option to raise hand. Did you see that? Click on participants, And under the list of participants, you will see that option of raise hand, and that's what you can use. So please offer your comments or give your question in the chat box. Question or comment.
So we have another 15 minutes for discussion. So you can come up with all the doubts you want to clear.
Treatment of neuropathic pain, Dr. Halim Nilofer. I was not planning to go into the treatment today. We were planning it for the next session, session after next. Next session, I think, Raju, somebody is going into mostly NSAIDs and common things like that.
Yes.
And then we'll talk about opioids and neuropathic pain also. Hey, but Dr. Halim Nilofer has asked already. We have not talked about ordinary things like paracetamol or NSAID. Don't underrate them. Even about things like paracetamol, I guess, even in this group, many people would not be very clear about the right dose to take. If you have a headache, or if you are giving paracetamol, whether it is to a child with fever or to somebody with headache, what dose of paracetamol would you use? Chetna, 4 times a day is acceptable. 3 times a day for paracetamol is not accepted. Duration of action in an ordinary individual is not for more than 6 hours. So I would strongly recommend anybody, if you are planning to treat a continuous pain, give paracetamol 4 times a day, not 3 times a day. 1. 2. The dose. Dr. Marina, maybe you can be a little more liberal with that. I know you must be trying to limit it to because of your worry about the liver, but hepatotoxicity, as Dr. Sandeep Kumar has mentioned, certainly does not happen with doses of 15 milligram per kg or less. I would recommend, ladies and gentlemen, for your routine practice, for a continuous administration, 12 milligram per kg routinely. I am saying that because we have proof that even for somebody with a borderline hepatic function like a cirrhosis, unless somebody is in hepatic failure, 12 milligram per kg 6 hourly is acceptable. It doesn't damage the liver. If for me, Dr. Abhishek Nag, absolutely not more than 3 gram to 4 grams a day, depending on the size of the individual, is fine. And nobody does hepatic damage manifest with a dose of less than 6 grams. But we don't want to give up to 6 grams. Certainly, we should limit it to 3 grams in somebody like me, or if it is somebody of 75 or 80 kg, limited to 4 grams a day. 4 times a day, Dr. Savera Ahmad, 4 times a day. 15 milligram per kg, Dr. Abhishek Kongi, 15 milligram per kg is the absolute maximum that you would use clinically. You don't exceed that dose. It's okay to use 15 milligram per kg, but routine is not less than 12 milligram per kg. Up not more than 15 milligram per kg, and 4 times a day. That will be quite acceptable. Okay, so we were talking about things like paracetamol. We have not talked about other NSAIDs. You will be dealing with that next time. I don't want to steal somebody else's thunder. NSAIDs are for next visit. Very important, very simple. Just see, even now we are struggling with the dose of paracetamol, etc. So we'll understand and use NSAIDs appropriately.
So Dr. Anupama has raised her hand. Dr. Anupama?
Yeah, sir, I just wanted to find out, you're all able to hear me?
Yes.
So I just wanted to find out, there will be a lot of overlap sometimes between both the sort of pains, like maybe nociceptive and neuropathic. We won't be able to distinguish, or is it very clear-cut demarcation?
Unfortunately, there is no clear-cut demarcation. If you had an investigation that could show, it would have been great. No demarcation. And sometimes it can be very confusing, like aching pain. Aching pain can be in anything. Even burning pain can be in both. So no clear-cut demarcation, Dr. Anupama. We will have to just look at the findings, make some intelligent guess, and sometimes you won't know, and then you can only do a therapeutic trial.
Sir, Dr. Abhishek have asked previously, pain more than 3 months duration, can it be neuropathic?
Wait a minute, Dr. Abhishek Nag, very good. That's the way IASP defines it, but there's something more to be added there. Pain of more than 3 months duration after completion of the natural course of the disease. Pain of more than 3 months duration after the natural healing process. So if somebody has had a bad injury, it is not 3 months from that time, it is from 3 months after the healing process. It should gradually come down. If it is not coming down, you should interfere. Don't wait for 3 months. Start the pain management as early as possible. So chronic pain is defined as a pain lasting more than 3 months after the natural cause of the illness. That is chronic pain. Neuropathic pain can be even in acute pain after a neural injury, a crash injury, for example, or a nerve severing. So neuropathic pain can be acute or chronic, but chronic neuropathic pains are more troublesome. Savera, 650 milligrams is okay for me, not for a 70 kg person. Selection of patients for surgery or type of surgery make us responsible for the healthcare provider for chronic pain in society too. Complicated question and complicated answer. Certainly, if somebody has a, say for example, fibromyalgia is a vague condition, certainly with a lot of emotional input, causes a lot of suffering. And if you are operating on a patient with fibromyalgia, you are sure to worsen the pain. Having said that, if it is an absolutely essential process, you will have to treat the pain and then give excellent postoperative pain relief so that the chronic pain doesn't get worsened. The same pain is tolerated differently by different people. What's the scientific explanation? Sorry, give me a second to get that bottle of water. I'm just feeling thirsty. Thank you, doctors, for your patience. Okay, one scientific explanation, Dr. Anmol, is that you may be tolerating it more because you are just a stronger individual. We do not have a clear evidence that the pain threshold at the neural level is different. There could be, but it could be marginal difference. At the nerve ending level, pain tolerance is not very different. But emotionally, our ability to cope with pain can be vastly different. That's part of it. Dr. Animal continues to ask, because we tend to be condescending to people who cannot tolerate reasonable pain. Reasonable? What is reasonable? We all judge others by our standards. Without thinking about it, you and I consider ourselves to be normal. I am a sort of normal person. And if you cannot tolerate pain as much as I can, you are being unreasonable. That is a condescending attitude that Dr. Animal is talking about. And thank you, Animal. We have to clearly understand that you and I are made as different individuals. I do not have a responsibility to be as strong as you, Raju. Raju, you are a very strong person. I am a weakling. Don't expect me to be as strong as you. That's not the way I'm made. You have to understand that. I may have some other strength. You shouldn't be condescending to me. And when Animal writes that, she is strongly feeling against that condescending attitude. Thank you, Animal. There's that question from Dr. Mohammad Shafaf. He says, if I am not wrong, I think there was a study showing that you can give 10 milligram per kg even for people with liver damage or cirrhosis. I have seen, Dr. Mohammed, a study where people with cirrhosis without hepatic failure, people with cirrhosis without hepatic failure were given 12 milligram per kg 4 times a day safely. In my presentation on Raju, will you give me a reminder later, please? I'll send that reference to everybody later. We did not go into assessment of pain today, doctors. That will have to follow. Assessment of pain in children is difficult, understandably difficult. We did not even go into assessment of pain in the adults today. We did not go into the pain scores or anything. That will have to come later. And whoever is doing it will touch upon assessment of pain in children. Are the analgesics different for nociceptive and neuropathic pains? Yes and no. Look, it is like this. If a neuropathic pain is caused, Raju, you must keep us on time, okay? Because any question that I am not able to answer now, like last time, I'll prepare the answers and send it to all of them. I'll give you an example. Dr. Millen, if somebody has a disc prolapse and neural compression, that's a neuropathic pain, right? Of course, it is. The radiculopathy is neuropathic. Is there a process of inflammation? What do you think, Milan? There is a process of inflammation because when the disc is protruding, there is edema. That's an inflammatory response. So the neural compression will be caused both by the, yes, Raju is asking me to stop. And the Raju, just 30 seconds more, please. The pain is caused both by the physical stimulation of the disc and by the inflammatory edema around it. That's a kind of neuropathic pain where NSAIDs would be effective. You see? Now take another case. For example, suppose it is post-herpetic neuralgia. The herpes was 3 months back. The pain is now. There is no process of inflammation there. NSAID is not going to help. So the difference in analgesics will have to be context specific. Having said that, generally neuropathic pains are less responsive to non-opioids and opioids. I did not say not responsive. I said relatively non-opioids, relatively non-sensitive. Therefore, neuropathic pains are often treated with a different class of medicines also, like anticonvulsants and tricyclic antidepressants, and the mechanism of that somebody else will go into later. And Dr. Reno and everybody else, I know that there are questions like last time. I'll send you responses to all the other questions, promise. Because if I go on for any length of time, Raju is going to be very angry with me. Raju, please go on.
Yes, sir. So today we're having a case presentation very relevant, so it will take time for discussion. So sorry to disturb you in this time. Dr. Abhishek, you can continue with the presentation, sir.
Dr. Abhishek, where is Joda? Which state?
Doctor, can you unmute from your end? We can't hear you.
Yes, yes.
Doctor, where is Joda?
Sir, it is in Odisha.
Far away from Cuttack?
Yes, sir, far away from a one-night journey.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Abhishek.
And
We
it
are
is
all
in
waiting to
Mines
hear your...
Hospital.
Yes.
Yeah. Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Madam Raju, should I start screen? Oh, already it has been shared.
Yes.
Okay, sir. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today, my case is regarding patient having a 34 years old female. She has been diagnosed with severe low back pain and she is pregnant. Ma'am, next slide. She has been presented with sudden onset of low back pain, pain where the pain is radiating the right leg since 2 weeks. She is having increased body weight throughout the time, and she is now 6 months pregnant. Our gynecologist thought that due to the contracted pelvis, she gave opinion that she should be posted for elective cesarean section. Next slide. So in the history of illness, she's 6 months pregnant. Her LMP was 5th December 2019. She has no other comorbidities just like PIH, pregnancy-induced hypertension, and gestational diabetes and anemia-like features. But she has a history of miscarriage twice before, in April 2018 and January 2019. A very great thing happened to her when we talked to her, because it is an elective case, so we have time to meet her, and she has been appeared to us with the low back pain. So we got time to ask this thing and came to know these type of things happen to her. Ma'am, next slide.
Doctor, let me ask, please go back, Raju. Let me ask you one doubt.
Yes, sir.
The person is appearing with the pain at 6 months of pregnancy, is it?
Yes, sir.
So, though you mentioned she is planned for elective surgery,
yes,
the elective cesarean is not now, on a future date.
Yes, sir. In future,
Okay.
that happened in future. Our gynecologist planned that.
Okay.
Yes. So in the examination part, patient having good build before pregnancy, but presently she has gained weight, average height. She is having localized lower lumbar and gluteal tenderness, and deficit of the lower limb. There is no localized swelling or any trigger point in lower limb or gluteal region. According to the pain score, numeral rating score, it is between 5 to 8 out of 10. Because this thing happened when because she's taking painkiller prescribed by her house physician time to time, and when she is taking the medicine earlier, when she has conceived, the pain is subsided, but later within 2 to 3 weeks, when she has developed more pain, it is become severe. So it is come in the purview of 8 out of 10. And the pain character is dull, aching through throbbing pain, sudden onset of pain for the 2 weeks I mentioned, sir. Pain increases on sitting and standing. There is tingling numbness of right leg occasionally. Patient having no fever. Her vitals are stable. That is why we rule out any red flags here. In the tests, we have done the straight leg rising and the reverse SLR, which are also negative. Her sleep pattern is okay, and patient is taking painkillers occasionally. Ma'am, next one. So I categorize two things in a treatment and significant investigations part. So in investigations, we generally do this thing that's hemoglobin, which is on normal here. Serum creatinine okay, liver function test within normal limit. So initial treatment was started, which there is no response to pain after 2 weeks, and patient started to limp. And patient, when came to OPD, he was limping. After all those tests, we asked for MRI LS spine, and it showed that there is a degenerative disc with annular tear at L4, L5 without any nerve root compression. Our fetus was in good health, definitely, and NRS score I mentioned that is 5 to 8 out of 10. Treatment plan immediately, our target was immediately, I just mentioned here, said what are our treatment plan. So when the patient having this pain, so we immediately control the pain with 60 to 70%. We have to control, and improving the mobility of the patient. After controlling the pain, we have to improve the mobility. After that, associated with this, we gave the stress management in the pregnancy, stress management along with everything, sir, because patient having that bad history of miscarriage, as well as during this time, she was thinking how my pregnancy will be and how will it be goes on, and am I having a good baby? What will be my problems after if these things, everything goes well? What will be the feature I have? So these are the things they asked. So elective cesarean section done on 36 weeks of pregnancy. This was uneventful. With the treatment, sir, what we have initiated with here, the pain scale become 3 to 5, that is mild to moderate out of 10, and some medicines are controlled.
Doctor, that was, you have mentioned the cesarean section. You are talking about the pain during the pregnancy or after the delivery?
Sir, during the pregnancy, sir.
Okay, got it.
Next slide.
Okay.
So the psychological aspects, she is homemaker, married for 4 years, living with husband. Husband is a government employee, and she was financially stable. Next. In the medication, sir, thinking about the first to 60 to 70% pain control, I just given paracetamol 3 to 4 gram in 4 to 6 divided doses per day, regularly for 24 hours and for a week. During that time, if patient having the, I asked them, requested the patient that for breakthrough pain, if you feel a breakthrough pain, you can take 50 milligram of diclofenac oral or IM, maximum 1 dose per day. So second week, sir, she is having that, no, sir, I'm still having the pain, and it is, she is still excruciating, so sir, give something. So I increase the dose of diclofenac, 150 milligram per day, for another 5 days for 2 to 3 divided dose. That here is the thing, sir, that she has 6 months pregnant, so sir, it is in second trimester increase. So the organism is okay, and diclofenac I have stopped after that. Before the cesarean section, I have stopped diclofenac. Along with the adjuvant therapy, when the pain reduces, I asked her, please do some limited mobility type thing, and you just go for lifestyle modification, because if you gain so much weight, if there is a hyperlordosis occur, then the pain will increase again. Yeah, sir, somebody asked diclofenac. Yeah, sir, diclofenac, I'm just saying the thing. Yes, doctor, sorry.
Yeah, you complete and then we'll come to the question.
Yes, sir. Then sir, I gave cold compression in the, I asked for cold compression in pain area, 15 minutes thrice a day for 3 weeks, and other supports I have advised. There is psychological counseling done to decrease the stress. Psychological counseling, sir, from palliative ground also I have asked the family member or husband. I requested the husband to be there, and I told him just you also counsel with the thing that no problem, everything will be fine, pain will definitely come down. But if you go on stressing yourself, and if you think that the pain will not come, because as we know, sir, pain is not a simple physiological thing; it is a combined thing. So along with the vitamin D mineral supplement also given from gynae part, they have given the thing. Back and pelvic muscle exercises initiated to our physiotherapist friend. He showed the thing, elaborated, and said improved pain scale was there, 3 to 5 out of 10. This happens. Um, so the main concerns are here the physiological stress due to bad obstetric history, and patient is having the precarious pregnancy of the future, the previous thing, and which presented with a moderate to severe low back pain. Summary here, sir, we have a 34-year-old female with previous history of miscarriage, currently 6 months precarious pregnancy, presenting with moderate to severe low back pain. Sir, many questions may come, sir. I may some points I may haven't touched, maybe I missed. So the thing is that the differential diagnosis here for this low back pain, because I found that if it's a discogenic pain, so there will be some injury on the vertebral area. There is some amounts of gyrophacial joint pain also, but it has been excluded because there is gyrophacial joint root, there is no tenderness, only the musculature there are tender. So nextly there is spondylosis and spondylolisthesis of the lumbar part is also excluded. So radiation exposure during pregnancy, in that regard I want to mention, sir, because it is not an ionizing radiation, so we can we gave USG, we have done USG and MRI in that case. And sir, palliative care is definitely a talk of time, sir, because perinatal palliative care or the palliative care to this mother, because who is under total utter stress for these things, and for knowing what will have done to her, what will be her future in the future, and how will be her baby, first thing. So these are things that come under purview of palliative care, and we, from our part, try to help her in that.
So go back, Raju. So you raised radiation exposure, but I think you already explained that you did not expose the woman to any dangerous radiation. I mean, MRI is certainly safer than doing even an X-ray, leave alone CT scan.
Yes.
Because we are using only magnetic resonance and not radiation.
Yes, sir.
I am going to the chats, and already there are questions to you.
Yes, sir. The first question is, was the weight gain normal for pregnancy or more than expected? Sir, patient developed weight gain more than expected because she was in stress. Stress is a catabolic stress, sir, and as well as she developed weight, and due to the spine hyperlordosis and the pain generated in the area of low back pain. So definitely, sir, patient developed more than expected weight.
Okay. And unless pain is effectively treated, understandably their mobility will be restricted.
Yes, and mobility.
If that disc prolapse, she will not be able to walk about. So understandably the weight gain is expected to be more.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Savera also has questions about vitamin D and calcium. Wait, but before that, Dr. Muhammad Shafal Ismail is asking, hey, doctor, you are giving diclofenac during pregnancy.
Sir, yes, sir, because pain is not getting subsided. Due to that, I have started, sir, it is, what I say, sir, it is, I have stopped this diclofenac before 2 to 3 weeks before the pregnancy, before the delivery. I know the concern is that there is some diclofenac, there is some renal complications like thing. Thinking that thing, I have stopped this because I in my slide I have mentioned the diclofenac I have given for some times, so not exceeding the time. I have mentioned the time limit, how much she will take the medicine. After that I stopped. After that I moved to next one, and 150 milligram within this is when she pain come down. When the patients, that's what sir you mentioned, sir taught us today in the thing, that when the pain subsided, then I come back again with the paracetamol part.
Abhishek, I am with you.
Yes.
Dr. Deepa obviously has been in an MRI room, is worrying about the claustrophobia of that mother. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yes,
Wait a minute. Coming back to the diclofenac question. Abhishek, I am with you. Dr. Muhammad Ismail, diclofenac or any NSAID is dangerous in the first trimester. They are known to cause fetal malformations in the first trimester of pregnancy. So, to be safe, as much as possible, we would avoid NSAIDs till the 16th week of pregnancy. The second period of danger during pregnancy is after 30 weeks. Because later, if we continue NSAID, there is the danger of premature closure of the ductus,
yes,
resulting in major problems. So I'm glad that Abhishek used it in this case. Here is a woman in significant pain, and the pregnancy, fortunate time, the state of pregnancy at that time was something like 24 weeks, which was quite safe for its use. So Dr. Mohammed Ismail, I think we'll congratulate Abhishek that he found the patient at that time of pregnancy where it was reasonably safe to use it. And maybe it's not only safe, I think Abhishek had a duty to use it. During that phase of pregnancy, it is safe, and somebody is in severe pain, which would be responsive to NSAID, and not using it would have been a significant problem. There are more questions, and I will not go into that question. You can answer that question after the next week's class. But Raju, please make a note of it. I should send them all one paper about NSAIDs, which may make you think about your choice of NSAID. I am not going into that now. Psychosocial evaluation is a question. And Dr. Sandeep Kumar, absolutely important. Here is a woman with a bad obstetric history. And her stress may have contributed to the pain experience. That is something to be borne in mind. Having said that, it would be also wrong to assume that all the pain is only because of psychological issues, and ignoring that would be wrong. Certainly giving her emotional support, promising her that you will walk with her on this journey. You will try your best to keep her pain-free, and also for her to complete her pregnancy safely. These are the things that we can promise her. Raju, your audio was not muted, but sacroiliac joint pain is very common in pregnancy, and she had gluteal pain also. Could single shot caudal epidural with LA plus steroid under USG or palpatory method be effective in lateral position? I should guess yes. If during this phase of pregnancy, naturally people will be scared about going in for an invasive procedure, and pain interventionist, I'm glad Priyanka, you are able to think about the patient's well-being, especially with somebody with already back pain. Many interventionists would be reluctant to go in with a procedure because if something goes wrong, always the anesthetist needle is blamed, is a general impression. But if you ask only I take only the issue, yes, a caudal epidural with local anesthetic and steroid is something that I would consider effective. If her pain was so bad and there was a risk in giving NSAID, suppose it was after 30 weeks, certainly this would have been a safer alternative. Everybody need not study about caudal epidural, but the lesson to take from Priyanka's question is, in difficult situations, also don't forget to consider interventional procedures. Some of them can be safe and effective. Milan. Milan is generally feeling that the music in MRI during an MRI scan is particularly enjoyable. And that's interesting. Physiotherapy would have helped along with medicine. So yes, just be cautious about physiotherapy. Physiotherapy aimed at relief from pain in this case would be great. Physiotherapy aimed only at joints and... Okay, let me clarify. Sometimes physiotherapy causes pain. Physiotherapy worsening pain has to be avoided in this case. That's only caution. Yes, certainly physical measures of pain relief are very good. Transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation could be helpful and safe. And other forms of physiotherapy, physical therapy itself could be helpful. That is something to be thought of. But certainly remember that physiotherapy should not add to the pain burden. Deepa doesn't like the MRI, the noise of MRI, those. Who was it who liked it? Sandeep or Milan? Oh, Milan. Milan likes the interesting music like sounds in MRI. See how we are all different. Okay. Any more questions? If you, any more questions arising out of Abhishek's presentation, we will deal with first. If not, we still have 8 minutes left, and I would rather go back to the questions that were posed earlier, unless there are questions remaining that are pertaining to Abhishek's presentation.
Sir, Dr. Bijli have asked a question, sir. Would TENS not be safer than analgesics?
TENS would be absolutely safe in a woman at any stage of pregnancy. TENS is transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, a simple method that causes electrical impulses to be generated so that at the level of the dorsal horn, by application of the gate control theory of pain, it is likely to cause pain relief. But absolutely, if the equipment is available and somebody knows how to use it, it is an adjunct. TENS is not something that relieves pain in everybody, and by itself, it's usually more of an adjunct than the primary form of pain relief. Raju, is there anybody with you?
Not now, sir.
Okay. Raju, what do you think? Can we, okay, Abhishek is talking about triamcinolone. Okay, that's about the caudal epidural. Dr. Himabindu is, hey, what a beautiful name, Himabindu. Himabindu is asking about the management. Could something else be done? There's always a lot of questions about, okay, could we have done this or that, etc. But essentially, I feel this was managed well. Common things rather than uncommon things first. Familiar things rather than unfamiliar things first. I would have also used an NSAID at that phase of pregnancy. I would have added a weak opioid at that phase of pregnancy without any hesitation. If those mothers did not give her pain relief, I would have considered an epidural injection. I would have considered, we do use transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation as an adjunct. It's a simple thing, easily learned, safe, with no known side effects if used with reasonable caution. So essentially, I approve the management. I might have added on something more if the pain was not easily controlled. Raju, whatever questions I can answer now, I will answer. But repeated desperate calls are coming from Deepa. I'll also try to find out what she's calling. Raju, go back to the questions that were answered and find out which question remains to be answered first.
Okay.
Before the case presentation. Questions before the case presentation. Hello, Deepa. Oh, ഞാൻ അറിഞ്ഞില്ല. Okay. Raju?
So we had a couple of questions, the use of two NSAIDs at a time. I think that will be covered in the next class. Next.
Raju, somebody may be having a headache tomorrow or something else. Paracetamol and another NSAID can be combined. Low dose aspirin and another NSAID may be combined in selected situations. But then other NSAIDs will not be combined. There is certainly no question of combining two other NSAIDs. Paracetamol and then another NSAID can be safely combined. You will go into that more in the next time. Okay.
Dr. Priyanka have asked cognitive behavioral therapy when to begin.
Oh, Priyanka, maybe we will go on to that later. Not just yet, when we have not even talked about basic management of pain. Maybe when we talk about difficult pain, we have a session on difficult pain. Priyanka, I suspect that you know a lot of pain management, and maybe at that time, you can contribute a bit for a couple of minutes for everybody's awareness about CBT, because my own CBT knowledge is theoretical and not much at all. So Priyanka, at that time, and on the session on difficult pain, please contribute a little bit about cognitive behavioral therapy.
So Dr. Milan have asked, in case of nociceptive pain, is it sufficient to just get rid of the stimulus? Will that not subside the pain, or analgesic is necessary?
Who has asked that?
Dr. Milan.
Huh?
Dr. Milan.
Milan, can you give me an example of what kind of thing were you thinking of? Say for an inflammation or a disc prolapse. Like, naturally, you have to remove the cause. So what kind of pain did you have in mind? Say, for example, I mean, it is almost...
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of severe dental pain related to the wisdom tooth eruption or something like that. Being a dentist, I'm worried about that.
Yeah, very good. Very good. Absolutely. See, listen, we are talking about pain. And Milan is pointing us to an important point. Let us not forget treatment of the cause. Just going on treating pain without attention to the cause of the pain would be laughable, wouldn't it? Thank you for pointing that out, Milan. Certainly, we must address the cause. In any palliative care or pain management, one of the first steps is to attention to the cause. Correct the correctable. But having said that, pain is starting now. At 10 o'clock tonight, it is severe. I ring up Dr. Milan. Milan says, I can give you an appointment for 11 o'clock tomorrow. I have to get through the night. I certainly need the pain management. And post-operative, after your procedure, I'll still need analgesics. But important point, not only in dental, in any pain condition, the first principle is correct the correctable. Correct the correctable. Correct the treat those that are treatable. Thank you. Thank you for that important point.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Raju, so send me the other chat questions, please, and I'll prepare answers and send it to them later. Time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very grateful to you for your active participation. It was remarkable. You all contributed so much. Thank you very much. Otherwise, it would have been a boring monologue from me. And Raju, thank you for facilitating, for all the background work, all the correspondence that you have been doing. And please convey my thanks to Vishnu also for the technical support. Ladies and gentlemen, see you later. I'll come back to you one of these weeks.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session. We'll be having sessions for you for the upcoming program. So I've shared the feedback link. Just give it a minute to do it. It is highly important for us to get your feedback so that we can improve on ourselves.
Yes, I repeat, please, please, please give us the feedback. Thank you. And Raju and Arun, you must share the feedback with me later. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Where do we look for the feedback form?
Ma'am, you haven't, can you see it in the chat option? I will repost it again.
Chat option. Okay, yeah, got it. We have to click on that.
And then give the submit button.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.